So we see a move in the golf swing from the pros, some of the best players in the world. And then when we look at that same window of the golf swing with our amateur golfers, we really don't see that same move. And this is a move that stretches pretty much the entirety of the backswing, and it's pretty darn important.
Yeah, it's one thing that we see, like Mike said, all good players doing and very few high handicappers doing. So when we see things like this, it's important to us because we can say, okay, we feel like to become a good player, you probably need some of this move in your swing. It's one of those kind of imperative moves.
Or at the very least, you shouldn't be doing the opposite of what good players do.
Yeah, and so if you can incorporate what we are going to tell you today into your swing, it can only help you, and B, your ball strike can probably take off.
And this has nothing to do with flexibility, with being thin and fit, none of those things. This is something every golfer can and should do in the golf swing. And it's something that a lot of golfers struggle with. And we're gonna kind of show you visually how this unfolds so you can kind of really understand how to incorporate this into your swing. All right, so we're borrowing one of our pros here. We're looking at his 3D image, and this is something, it's not a pro move. We see it all the time in pros, but it's just a good golf swing move.
Yeah, you see lower handicappers with it. You don't see a lot of high handicappers with it.
No, and we don't see most amateurs do it because it's really misunderstood, I think, and kind of conceptually misunderstood about how the lateral motion of the golf swing kind of corresponds with the rotation of the golf swing.
Yeah, and it's a little bit counterintuitive when you think about, especially in transition, what the normal golfer thinks he should be doing to what the better player actually does is a bit counterintuitive for them, so I think that's why people struggle with it.
So we see most golfers, right, will go to the top of their swing as they're completing their shift to the right for a right-handed golfer away from the target.
Yeah, because I think, I'm going to load up, so I'm going to turn everything to the right while I'm loading to the right, and I'm on my right foot as I'm maxed out here.
Maximum turn, maximum shift, maximum arm swing, everything gets to the top at the same time.
Yeah, and that's like the kiss of death.
How many good players have we seen do that?
Zero.
All right, so if that's your idea of the backswing, we need to change that because, again, we don't want to be doing the opposite of what good players do.
Yeah, so why don't you take us through here what this tour player is going to do.
Okay, so we're going to break this down in kind of series and you can start to work on these individually, which is a great way to break down a complex movement, is to chunk it, right? Mm-hmm. Sean's done a lot of reading and research on just chunking these complex movements. And if you really want to do them, this isn't something that you should be thinking about during when you're out there on the first tee thinking about doing.
No, you need to practice it slow motion and chunk the pieces together. All that means is you take kind of the first part of it and master that, and then try to blend in kind of the second part of it at slow motion. Then all of a sudden you try to speed it up a little bit and speed it up.
These aren't swing thoughts.
Yeah, it's just something you need to learn, the basic motion.
These are learning to swing the golf club correctly.
And reprogramming what your mind does and what your mind has a concept of.
Exactly right. So we're going to look at our golfer here, and as he goes back to shaft parallel in the backswing, we're going to see him, and this is so common, we're going to see him move off the ball his maximum amount. Somewhere in that window from address. Some players do it a foot off the ball. Some players do it right here around shaft parallel.
And there's this window that we see them all in. And again, we look for commonalities in great players because success does leave clues. And if we see commonalities that all good players do, okay, let's try to work that into your swing.
That's exactly right. We need some of that.
Yeah, this is one of them.
And we're talking about his center of his hips and the center of his chest, right? They're off the ball in this really early window. Now, compare that with what we see most amateurs do. We don't see hardly anything done at this point, or even some hips that move forward at this point.
Well, they've been so ingrained in their head not to sway. It's like, I can't sway, I can't move at all to the right. So they either just stay very still or they start sliding the opposite way. And we don't want to see you do either one of those.
This would be the equivalent of if I'm going to try to throw a baseball as far as I can to go here and just go forward with it. I would never take baseball back and go forward my whole throw. Everybody who has ever held the baseball understands the windup, and this is your windup in the golf swing.
Yeah, it's the counter movement.
Yes.
Every other sport would have a counter, like a racket sport, the backswing with a racket be the counter movement so you can load and go. Right?
But it's got to happen early.
Yeah, so as this golfer starts back, he's already making his shift into this spot right here. And if it gets off track right here, or if you stay too centered or you go to the left, the whole rest of the swing is affected. And the baseball analogy is good. I was given a lesson the other day, and the gentleman had sent his son to a pitching coach. And they're very, it's very technique oriented, just like the golf swing. There's things that you cannot do if you want to be a good pitcher. And they always would look for what they called the queen bee flaw. I thought that was interesting. Yeah. So he said, well, once they identified the queen bee flaw for his son was taking his left shoulder out too early, well, the queen bee gives the orders to the rest of the bees. So if the queen bee had a problem, all the rest of the motion was going to be affected and have a problem. So I kind of like that.
That's a great way to describe it. Yeah.
So this might be like your queen bee flaw is not getting to the right enough early or shifting this way too early in the backswing. The whole rest of the swing is thrown off.
We see a lot of this kind of dragging the club head away low and slow that really kind of just serves to lock up all this dynamic movement right off the ball.
Yeah, absolutely correct, no doubt.
So when there's no dynamic movement there, we kind of run into issues with where the club goes in the backswing and just the overall timing of the pressure. It really sets the swing off kind of behind the 8-ball.
I mean, the first 2-3 feet of the swing, guys, that's where things are going to get off track from 99% of golfers. Like Mike said, if you don't have any early movement right, the club tends to get inside. This little move we have here early gets the club out in front of us more, right? Allows us not to overturn early, which sequences the backswing and allows us to make this kind of next phase of the swing.
Now, we're talking 1 to 2 inch window these guys move in. That's about the width of a golf ball. Golf ball's under 2 inches. We're not talking, like, this is an equal flaw.
Yeah.
That move. We're not saying blow off the ball and then you'll be able to make a great downswing. That's not it at all. It's a small, but it's movement and it's there.
Yeah.
And you don't want to try to avoid it. So as we get from this checkpoint number 2, right, the shaft parallel up to left arm parallel, in that window is where we start to see the movement back towards the target.
Right. So
start is the key word there.
So what you'll see, as Mike mentioned, moving to checkpoint 2 to checkpoint 3 right here, the great players are already starting to kind of recenter, and you'll see that with our tour player here, how as he's into the right side here, he's actually starting to move back as he's rotating to get more recentered.
That's the key point here. So now we're starting to see where the concept breaks down for a lot of golfers. Everybody gets moving off the ball.
Right, a lot of guys do.
A lot of guys don't want to do that, but they get that. Now, as it's continuing to start moving back, and again, we say started, you don't get forward at this early window. You start, is when you're rotating, is when this right shoulder is moving away from the ball. That's when you're kind of recentering yourself, moving back to where you started.
Yeah, so I think golfers, they tie together the backswing rotation with the backswing weight shift.
Yes.
But you got to remember that you're still turning. This is, if there is a, like Mike and I laugh all the time about magic moves. If there's a magic move for the backswing, it's continuing to turn back as you take your body back towards the middle.
So Sean can turn, he can rotate closed in the backswing towards me.
Yep.
Or away from me.
Yep.
No, rotate closed.
Okay.
You can move towards me as you do that, or you can move away from me as we do that.
Got it.
It doesn't affect your rotation.
Exactly. I can still turn.
Yes.
So I think again you get off track when you think, okay, this is a backswing motion. How would I ever go forward?
Yes.
But you absolutely need to go forward.
You have to. Yes.
So you're at left arm parallel, a checkpoint 3 here. As you continue rotating, you need to feel like you're kind of drifting into the middle of the stance again, or back
kind of back
50,
between
50.
your feet again.
It is so crucial to get that in your head first.
Yes.
And then start applying it to your golf swing.
And then as we see golfers move from this left arm parallel to the top now.
Yeah.
The last checkpoint of the backswing, they are either back to where they started at dead zeros, or they're an inch or two in front of where they started.
Yeah.
So they're starting their downswing forward of where they were at address.
Yeah, I think a great way to think about that, and you'll see our tour player do this, but a great way to think about it is that, the end of your backswing is kind of right in here.
With the lateral motion, for sure.
Yeah, the rest of it is finishing the motion, but you're going toward it. Well, think about the club. It's reached its backwards point right here.
It's the farthest away from the target right here. That's
for the
kind
club,
of where you want to be the farthest
yeah,
away.
for the club, that's as far away as it's ever going to get. So if you start thinking about that, okay, that's as far away as my body's going to get, but I can still take the club up over my head and just continue my rotation.
Yes.
As I get back to 50-50, and at the top, which would be checkpoint 4, I might even be a little bit ahead of where I started, which is completely fine. We see top players do it all the time.
We see the head move forward slightly, so there's a big fear with the head moving forward at all in the golf swing.
It moves forward.
Most golfers play their ball too far back in their stance, so when they do this movement correctly, now the alarm bells go off, I'm too far forward, so they immediately throw it back.
And do this.
Yes.
So they're incentivized to kind of throw the club. So again, another video for ball position, but take care of your fundamentals at checkpoint 1, right? Get those in order. And then once you get up here to the top, when you are recentering, you're incentivized to kind of go forward because that ball position's up in the front of your stance.
That's exactly right. So we see these great players and good golf swings. They're literally starting the downswing, and we mean by that by just the change of direction of the club. The rest of this stuff is already in the downswing.
That's right.
But when that club changes direction, they are already forward of where they started. That makes the downswing, it's a quarter of a second. That makes it infinitely easier to do. You don't want to accomplish all this forward movement once that club changes direction.
No, there's no time for it. And when you try to fit everything all at once, that's a recipe for disaster.
Because that's where you get the benefit of being forward early, is that you can stop it early.
Yeah.
When you do that late, when you try to go forward in the downswing, you get this kind of impact, saggy legs, slide, all that stuff that we don't want, flippy, all that. So we got to take advantage of this huge window of time. This 3/4 of your golf swing happens from address to the top of the swing. That's when we got to get this stuff working correctly. All right, so for our drill for this section, and there's one drill that works for everything in the golf swing. What is it?
Just do it right.
Doing it right is literally the best drill you could do.
It's kind of tongue in cheek. I mean, obviously, if you're at full speed, you're not going to be able to do it right. But you need to be at first, anyways.
Yes.
You need to slow it down, chunk it up, like we've talked about. So you piece these things together and then start to blend them together in slow motion. But just doing it correctly, slowly, is the first step. It's not, it doesn't always take a drill. Just do the motion correctly, right? But how do we know we're doing it right?
Right. So I could not agree more. There's no substitute for learning how to do these as you stand there preparing to make a golf swing. Now, the difficulty for a lot of golfers is they only want to make a golf swing at one speed.
They want to beat balls on the range and try to change something. And let me tell you this.
You may have to go slow to do it right. It may be something like that.
Well, yes, that is correct. But the thing is, just knowing something in your head doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it. That's where golfers get off track. You'll watch this video. Oh, I see what I got to do. You have zero chance of doing it. Just because you think you know how to do it in your head, you have not trained the neural pathways to change them enough to hope for this to hold up on the golf course or the driving range. You got to do it slow, like everything else you've ever done. You've got to go slow, chunk it up, learn it, and then you can do it.
That's right. I understand that it takes a certain amount of knee bend and a certain amount of this to have a high jump that's 11 feet. I can't go out and do it.
No, you have to train and train the timing of it,
yes.
right? Just to mentally understand something does not mean you can do it.
No. So we've got to get the body on board with what the mind understands to be correct.
That's right.
And to do that, it's got to be the right movements, and usually very slow at first.
Yeah, extremely slow, to the point where if you can't do it, you need to slow down.
Just force yourself to make the right movements as slow as it needs to be to make the right movements.
So, and we talked about this. What should they be looking for if they're filming themselves or like?
So we're going to use our avatar again, and you set the camera up dead on, face on, to get the best view of this. Don't have it cockeyed to one side or the other.
Kind of 90 degrees to your belt buckle.
90 degrees to your belt buckle. Belt buckle high is going to give you the best example of how to do this. So we're going to put a vertical line right up in the middle of his body. Now, as he's moving through his backswing, you're going to see him shift on this side of his vertical line, and then as he transitions, he's going to be on the forward side of his vertical line. Now, the key point for most golfers, it's these start separating way too early.
Yeah, Mike makes a great point. Throughout the backswing and early downswing, you pretty much want to keep the center of your torso or the center of your shoulders and the center of your hips kind of on top of each other.
On top of each other.
So, when you're making your back little tiny movement back, counter movement, and then recentering, these are going to stay on top of each other until you get about right release point in the downswing.
Yeah,
Then they
say
start separating.
About left arm parallel is kind of what we want you to go. Backswing to left arm parallel and downswing in this drill. And you should see yourself forward of the starting line.
So it would be, okay,
With
address,
both upper and lower body.
yeah, a little to the right.
Yep.
Maybe 1 inch, let's say.
1 to 2 inches,
You
yep.
know, recentering here.
Yep.
And then to here, I still have the center of my upper body and my center of my lower body pretty much on top of each other.
But about 3-4 inches forward.
But forward to where you started.
Yep,
3 or 4
exactly.
inches forward.
And that's essentially where you feel you're done moving forward. Now the momentum of the rest of the downswing is going to move you a little more forward, but you're not trying to go forward from there.
It's, for all intents and purposes, this is your hitting platform, we like to call it. So you're in the position here to go ahead and just hit the ball hard and kind of stabilize everything.
One of the worst ideas that we see golfers do when they come in and we're able to capture it's the concept of getting into here and trying to
Launch.
shove forward into impact. We do not see good golfers doing that. They get that lateral motion forward done early so they can stabilize through impact. We got to hit the middle of the club face.
You don't want to be trying to push late into the downswing. It just doesn't happen anyway.
That's exactly right. So your drill is doing it right. It's as simple as pulling a dead vertical line up through the middle of your body, get the camera angle correctly, and record yourself. Watch when you start to move back and forth across this line. It needs to be done on time and it needs to be done in the right amounts. You do that, start adding speed, the more comfortable you get, you're really going to start to see your ball striking improve, not only with irons, but also with the driver.
It's a magic move. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and give us a like, give us a thumbs up. Also, if you have a question about the video or there's a topic you want us to cover in a future video, leave it down in the comments below. We read every single comment and we respond to them, and that's how we create new content for you in the future. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and click the subscribe button so you know exactly when one of our new videos comes out.
If you found this video helpful and you need more help with your consistency, we want to help you with that. Go to the first comment below this video, you'll see a link. It's our first pinned comment, there'll be a link in there. Click on that link, we'll take you to our #1 consistency drill to help you hit the ball more solidly and more consistent every time you're out on the course.